Okay, I just got an order for a puzzle pyramid. The person that ordered it said they want rainbow and bronze. Kind of an interesting choice, but it's not responding, so I'm just going to do what I think I want to do, I guess. So there's a few different options for the different types of rainbow that could be chosen. Obviously, you've got glitter, which I'm not going to do different types of rainbow glitter. That would be pretty extravagant, especially for a guy ordering it. But so I've got the translucent pigments. I've got opaque pigments. I've got mica pigments or colors, and then I've got chameleon. So just saying rainbow isn't straightforward enough, but he's not responding. So I'm just going to do opaque pigments, I think would look the best. And I just ordered these so they're not open yet. And then I'm gonna do bronze mica. Because unfortunately, there's no bronze that isn't metallic-y. Kind of out of the frame, but that's okay. So this takes a ton of resin. I did just order more J-Diction resin, but I'm pretty sure it's gonna use up all of this, my ugly yellow silicone cup. So I'm just gonna get these cleaned up, make sure we don't have any dust in here and all that fun stuff on these, and get to pouring. So he did order this yesterday, and it needs to go out within 5 days, which won't be a problem, but this is a very tedious project, and that every one of these little puzzles or pieces that will eventually come out need to be cleaned up. The edges are pretty sharp, so I'm going to end up having to use a deburring tool and make them all rounded on the sides. I sanded it down, so I made this once for a relative for Christmas, and it was awesome. It was well received and it was really fun to do, but yeah, it was very time consuming trying to clean up the edges that were pretty sharp, and being that it's a puzzle, you're gonna have it in your hands, and I don't want it to be sharp that it'll cut anyone. So I'm probably gonna fast forward this while I'm opening all these with a needle. I haven't punctured the seal on these yet. And then I'll measure my resin and stir it and get all the colors ready. And then we'll slow down and watch as I fill them all up. Okay, come along. So as I was getting ready to prep all these bottles, since like I said, they have never been open, so I'm gonna use a little pin to puncture the top, because when you cut them, it could spray, and I don't want the hole that big anyway. So you're supposed to shake them well before they get used. I figure I just shake them in this. Sorry, that's a little loud. Kind of a genius idea, if you ask me. Putting it on a heating pad or a resin heat mat, so it'll speed up the curing time, because these are going to be tedious to clean up. So I'd like these to be done before that, so I can try to be doing something while, I don't know, instead of wasting time. I'm also going to be, so there's 23 pieces divided by all these colors, but I'm not planning on using all of these. I'm gonna experiment with them first before we pour, because the red and the orange looked pretty opaque in the picture, in the examples that I have. But I don't want to leave red and orange out of the rainbow. But at the same time, I want them to be all the same opacity, translucency. Yeah, to be uniform across the board. So I'm going to start to mixing my resin. I haven't warmed them up. They're just room temperature, which I might just throw them in a hot water bath real fast while I'm getting everything else prepped. So here we go. So here we're starting with 2 bottles of resin, so the part A and the part B, that I put in a hot water bath for about 10 minutes. And I also put, so it's Jade Diction high gloss resin, I put a light behind my container that I end up stirring the resin in. And I also create a little hash mark on the lines that I need to measure up to with a Sharpie. But the light just helps me see that distinct line where the resin's setting so much easier. And I also mix both A and B in the same container. That's just what works for me. I guess just go with what you see in your directions for the specific resin you're using. But I haven't figured out why it's more beneficial to mix in separate or to measure them in separate containers. And here I'm doing a little happy dance because I just found out that my sister is hopping a plane 3,000 miles away to come see me. And I do take the cap off, the bigger cap, the whole cap altogether, so I can pour it in a lot quickly or a lot faster for big projects. And then when I need to get down to like the last few milliliters, I put that narrow small hole cap back on, and that way I have a lot more control of what is coming out. And we've got Speedy Gonzalez typer back there. My husband works in the office that is right next to me, so you can hear his loud clicking. And I do know that I'm wearing more of a particulate respirator. It does help with odors and chemicals, but not as much as a vapor and gas respirator. The resin that I'm using by Jade Diction is no VOC and non-toxic. So it's as safe as I can get, but I do want to get a vapor respirator eventually. But for right now, I'm using what I have, and the room is very well ventilated with a fan. So I'm being as safe as I can, but I do end up wanting to get a vapor respirator eventually. Now we're just dispersing the resin into their own container so I can add the colors. Sophie, hold on, baby. And you can see here from just the colors that I'm doing now and all the colors that you have as options. This could be a pretty creative and custom piece. Right now it's blue and green, and I came from Seattle, which is home of the Seahawks. So I was just thinking as I'm editing this, that could be such a fun theme. If someone wanted it for like their sports teams, then you do it the sports colors and maybe put like your favorite number or logo in there. But I just thought that could be interesting. But this guy did want rainbow, so I tried to incorporate as many of the fun colors as I could in a bronze base. What my daughter says here kind of cracks me up.
Why are you playing with stuff?
I don't know,
It's not fun to do that. Go with stuff. But you like it.
She said, "Why are you playing with your stuff? It's not fun."
But not yet.
She said, "But you might like it, just not yet." So at this point, I am coming through with my blade and rubbing alcohol to make sure there's no raised pieces or any stickiness on the mat, so my pieces don't cure or finish curing uneven or have stickiness left over that'll get on the pieces. And now comes one of my more favorite parts, is demolding. Just the satisfaction of seeing each piece come out of that mold and hearing those little popping sounds. It's very satisfying. Again, I always enjoy the striations and the colors that mica makes on the bottom of the item, since when you pour resin in a mold, usually the bottom ends up being the top when you take it out of the mold. And I really like the way the bottom looks, but the top is nice and smooth too, but everything settles, so all the cool streaks end up floating up to the top. Also, I do end up showing all of these pieces being unmolded, demolded. So if that's not for you, if that takes too long, if you're not a fan, then go ahead and skip forward a couple minutes. I'm not really sure why this neon green one decided to capture so many bubbles. The blue one doesn't, and even those light yellow ones that you can see, and the pink, you can see through all of them. But for some reason, I don't see quite as many bubbles throughout the pieces as I do those neon ones. I like them, I think it's kind of cool, but it's odd that it's a one-off with the colors. So if you have any ideas why they might show up in one pigment but not the other, please let me know. or should I do these shimmery mica powders? So these are all translucent. You can see through them. Some of them have bubbles, but that's just the way it is. You can't see. There you go. Bubbles, bubbles, bubbles. Or should I do these shimmery mica colors? Would that be better? Because this color, this base color down here, is that color. So should I just redo it and do all these mica colors in rainbow instead of the translucent? It looks so weird together. I mean, these are pretty, but not with the bronze base. Okay, what do you think? Accidentally spilled a little bit of mica here, but I love that color. So pretty. So I do have little molds that I made from the excess resin, but I was just gonna, basically, it was just gonna go to waste. And I end up making these for just little gifts, my daughters, whoever. And you can see by those bubbles, towards the end of the working time, my resin got quite thick. So I decided to just pour it in there and hopefully it would work. And I can end up taking those bubbles out or sanding them down, and that one was pretty perfect. But here you can see all that excess resin. There it is. So I poured the resin and it just was so thick, I just globbed it all on, and it's all melded together, but I can cut those off and sand them down and they'll be just like new. This pink, I think, is one of my favorites, if you can't tell by my nails and the color. It's just such a happy, hot, vibrant color. So pretty. So yeah, here you can see me eventually. I'll rip those apart and they come apart pretty easy, and then I can just take a pair of wire cutters, which is what I use, or cuticle cutters, and just snip those off. Scissors, sandpaper. Pretty easy to fix. Not the easiest mold to demold, but it's pretty entertaining. And at this point, the resin is still pretty bendy, as you can tell, and uncured. But resin has a magnificent muscle memory, in that if I just left it squished the way it was, it'll bounce back. It's pretty crazy. Got a little husky colors in there. Some of these are kind of odd colors, and I probably wouldn't ever give them to someone or sell it to someone, I mean. But I'll just keep them, fun pieces for my kids, or if someone just likes it like that. I always have an option. Anytime anyone orders from me, I show them what I already have and give them the option of just sending that item out versus waiting until it's custom and shipped and takes forever. But sometimes people go for that. They want something that they can see in front of them instead of have to be creative and think of colors and options. But as you can see, this order made quite a mess.
I still actually think I have to clean up all that mess, but all these cups capture all these fun little petals at the end, and I do end up saving them. I'm not sure what I'm going to use it for, but I have that whole little jar full of just random little pieces. So I might just make a fun big, I don't know, mosaic. I don't know, some kind of cool piece with all those random scraps. I do not like letting things go to waste. And this is one of my Temu finds. It's a deburring tool. And I think it's for like plastic or copper pipes or something, but it works perfectly for skimming it across the sharp corners of these pieces, and it just takes nice little ribbons of, the sharp edge of that resin just right off. That way I don't end up having to sand down near as much. And as you can see, I do end up sanding this with my sanding block at an angle. That way I don't end up scuffing up the finished, nice, gleaming surface. Again, I'm about to demold each one of them, obviously, individually. So if you don't want to sit here through all that, then I'd recommend skipping forward a couple of minutes. Already, I can tell too, this was a much better option. The mica with the mica, it just makes way more sense than mica with translucent pigment. I'm not quite sure what I was thinking. In my head, it seemed like a good idea, but even as I was pouring it, it was not my best idea. This part, man, I tell ya, this is quite the labor of love. And the reason that I can't really list it for a more competitive price, I have to hand sand each of these pieces, and it takes a good amount of time. I mean, it's not that bad at the end of the day, I guess. It's just maybe, I don't know, maybe it's 4 minutes per piece, but it takes a long time, especially this, multi-sided piece. Each side needs to be filed down so it doesn't cut people, or it's just pretty sharp. And I have gotten resin cuts before, and they kind of remind me of a paper cut, and that they go deep and they really agitate, and it's pretty frustrating. Obviously, I would never let one of those kind of pieces get sold like that, and that is why you have to be even more meticulous and careful about making sure all those edges are very sanded down. I also decided not to bore you with sanding down each piece on camera. So now I'm just kind of showing all the bulk of them and all the fun pieces. It actually is a very fun puzzle. I've done it a few times and it's very entertaining. Now I have all those translucent pieces, but I had no base to go with it. So I decided to make a base that would go with those pieces. And this process took so long because I had such an idea in my head about each color being separate. And in order to make the colors not all completely blend or marble together, you need to let the resin sit in the pot for a little while and kind of cure a little bit. I wouldn't say cure, harden. And this part took forever. I guess resin has a 45-minute working time, or at least the one that I use. And so it took pretty much 40 minutes before my resin was at the point where I could confidently pour it without all the colors mixing. I should have gone a little bit sooner because towards the end of my pour, you can tell it got much too thick and solid, and it was very hard to smooth out of the hole or out through the whole mold, but you'll see that soon enough. So at this point, I did decide to pull out another project and use some of this extra clear resin that I didn't end up mixing. And I thought I would have an abundance, but I probably should have used this clear resin for my final piece because I just needed a tiny little bit, and this probably would have made it perfect. But there's me checking the consistency again. It's not thick enough. And these, I don't know what kind of flower this is. I want to say larkspur, from my mom's days of drying flowers, but I don't know, maybe it's not. So I took the heat gun to all of these individual pots a few times, and off camera I probably did it a total of 4 or 5 times to try to speed up the I guess the process of it heating, because the hotter it gets is when it starts to cure. So it just builds up temperature, and the faster it builds, the thicker it gets. So I was trying to get it hotter so it would thicken up even faster, but it still took about 40 to 45 minutes. And I had this M from shells that I did. I think I started this like 3 months ago, and I don't know what my problem was, but I just didn't add that last clear coat. It just kept getting pushed aside. So I finally finished it. Same with the B. I started that when I did the M. And so now I'm finally getting that out of the mold, or at least preparing to get it out of the mold. And do as I say, not as I do. Do not use a torch on molds like this that are so thin. I've scorched a few, and you can't. You can demold, but you take the mold with it and end up having to cut, and it ruins the mold. I have so many of those letter molds that I risk it. I shouldn't, but I do. And now I've decided that it's finally ready to pour. Like I said, I probably should have gone a few minutes sooner, but it's what's done is done. The way I decided to pour this, the colors weren't my favorite, but hindsight, I'll know better what kind of color blocks I'll decide to do. But you can see it's getting pretty thick. And I am at the end of all my cups. So now I have to scrape the bottoms to get as much resin as I can, because all those triangles in the middle all need to be covered. And so I scraped as much out of each cup as I could, and now I'm trying to make a little go a long ways. I'm gonna spread it all out and get to work. And then just spraying some alcohol on the surface to pop those bubbles, and getting ready to demold everything. I'm not exactly sure why I decided to collapse that tent and then pick it up, but that's okay. And I am on fire with the way these shell letters turned out. They're so fun and unique. I think they're the perfect way to commemorate or capture a special occasion, like a fun day at the beach, or a birthday, or an anniversary, or a proposal. That would be so cool to collect some, shells off the beach on your proposal day and turn that into a keychain or something, some kind of keepsake. Of course, you can also add a name and text, or date or whatever, to mark a special occasion. I think that would be such a fun gift to give someone to mark that special day for them. So for this one, I'm not sure why I was holding it upside down, but I put sand in there that was at the bottom of my collection of shells. And the only thing that saved me is I added some champagne colored mica powder that made it glisten a little bit more. But once you add sand to water, or in this case, sand or resin to sand, or vice versa, it turns it so much darker and it does not look pretty like a Floridian sandy beach. And I did look it up, and this is not larkspur. It's status or statusy. It's did not ring a bell. My mom made flower arrangements with this so much, and I thought I would remember as soon as I saw or heard the name. I do not remember status or statusy. Apparently, statusy is what Google pronunciation said, but who knows? And this, unfortunately, you can tell some of those ridges. It's not like a smooth, glassy surface. I did end up waiting too long, and then I found a hair towards the end, or a piece of fuzzy, or whatever it was. So I tried to get it out, and it was just too thick. It left a little mound, but that's okay. I think this is going to be a personal piece that I'm going to keep for home. But again, demolding, so satisfying. I ended up making that resin stretch just perfectly. It would have been nice to have a little bit more, but I didn't have to end up mixing anymore. But I like the way the blue and the neon and the purple and the neon mixed, but I don't like the red in there. I think that it's too opaque, but it just throws off the symmetry of it or something. Just not my favorite choice, but that's okay. It's still cool. And here we have the finished result. So it did take me a good part of 10 to 15 minutes to figure out how to put that together. And the goal is that you don't have any holes or big gaps in the middle. And obviously the sides need to be flush like a pyramid. So that's the finished result of today's, and that's another color that I made. And I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I had fun making it. Let me know if you want links to anything you saw in today's video. And if you enjoyed it, please hit that like button and consider subscribing. Thanks.